Well, it's summertime, and during the summer, there are a lot of things that we need to be concerned about, particularly from a health perspective. Sometimes we get real excited about the beach and about the sun and about tanning, including me, and that's a joke. And but there are some precautionary measures that one should take as it relates to their health and the sun and summertime. So today we have with us Dr. Paul Dale, who's gonna give us some tidbits and some education on sun safety, summer safety, cancer safety, and not getting cancer safety, and very, very important information that will help us to make important decisions as it relates to the sun and summer. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham, and as I said, we have with us Dr. Paul Dale. Just tell us a little bit something generally about yourself.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to be here today.
I'm glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hottest day of the year.
Yep.
Almost melted walking in here.
Yes, sir.
But I am a surgical oncologist, and I did my general surgery training right here in Macon, Georgia. When I went away for 2 years to the John Wayne Cancer Institute in Santa Monica, and did a fellowship in cancer surgery.
Yes, sir.
I don't do gallbladders and hernias. I do cancers.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and that's all I do. A lot of breast cancer, a lot of melanoma. So we're going to talk a little bit about sun today, and melanoma, of course, is one of the scariest cancers out there right now. It's one of the fastest growing cancers in incidence in the United States, second only to multiple myeloma.
Okay, now so melanoma, in fact, is skin cancer.
It is.
That's
It's the scary one. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
There's three types, three main types of skin cancer: squamous cell, basal cell, and melanoma. The squamous and the basal, there's so many of those, we don't even know how many. There's probably millions in the United States, and they're treated by your local doctor. They just take them off, or they put cream on them, and they don't give us any trouble usually. Sometimes they can be bad actors, but real rare. Unfortunately, the melanomas are the ones that kill people.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a person can actually die from skin cancer.
Oh, yes, sir. Especially the melanomas. They can die of squamous cell if they just leave it be and let it go, but that's rare. But the melanomas, unfortunately, they do bad things real quick. And therefore, the earlier you diagnose those, the earlier you know they're going on, the quicker we can...
Have you ever seen any African Americans or dark-skinned people with skin cancer?
I have. Yes, sir.
For some reason, there's a myth, and then I probably thought that you don't hear much about it. Oftentimes you see your lighter-skinned friends, with certain marks or indications, but I guess because you don't have the same kind of contrast, right, and can't recognize, right, the sores or what have you as much. Then I know it's a lot of people who think that black folks don't get skin cancer.
So here's why they don't usually. It's because they're dark skinned. The dark skin comes from pigment in your skin. It's called melanin.
Hey.
Okay? And the more melanin you have, the more you're protected, right? So people who come from areas where the sun exposure was real harmful, coming from Africa, the African continent, say, then you didn't want to get sunburned, and it protected you and stopped you from getting the skin cancers as much. People from Ireland, fair hair, have they're white as can be. They're at higher risk because they don't have the melanin to protect them. And people think, well, if I get a tan, I'm not going to get cancer, or a tan is good. Actually, that's not true. What happens is when you get that tan, it's your body's way of telling you that the sun was too much, and you hurt yourself, and your body's trying to protect itself from any more of that sun. So there's no such thing as a good tan, because it's your body's way of showing, hey,
so the people out in the sun are at risk
At risk.
of
At
increasing
risk.
and enhancing,
Absolutely.
either black or white.
Either black or white. If you have three blistering sunburns in your life, and most blacks don't have that, but if you have on the top of your head or other areas, then you're at increased risk for getting a cancer, skin cancer. Absolutely.
Wow.
3 blistering sunburns.
Okay, a couple of questions for you. What are the indicators of skin cancer, both in our people from Ireland and people from Africa?
Sure. And they're different. They're somewhat different, believe it or not. So let's just talk about the A, B, C, D's, and E's of skin cancer. How's that?
I like that.
The A is that a mole on your body turned asymmetrical. In other words, it doesn't look like on one side of the mole is different from the other side. Asymmetry. Okay? The B's are the borders. The borders become ill-defined. Okay? Instead of like a nice cookie cutter mole, it's got this funny little
Jagged edge.
Jagged edge mole.
Okay.
C is the color. If the color isn't unified throughout that mole, if it starts to change color, that's a worry. D is the diameter or the size. And it's often said if a mole is greater than a pencil head, you probably should have it looked at. That one's a little iffy because there are plenty of moles on our bodies that are benign that are bigger than a pencil head. But if it grows and gets bigger than a pencil head, then you better watch it. There's maybe something going on. And E is the interesting one, and it's basically the evolution. I like to call it the patient has concern. If a patient comes to me, or if you're worried about a mole on your body and you say, you know what, that's changing, you know what, it's itching, or it starts to bleed, or something's going on with that mole, have your doctor take a look at it. I don't care what color your skin is, have your doctor take a look at it. And you ask, have I seen African Americans with melanomas? Absolutely. Typically, I will tell you this, I have seen them in areas where the sun doesn't shine. And that's where you're at more risk. So where doesn't the sun shine? On the palms of your hands, under your fingernails, and the soles of your feet are the highest risk for African Americans to get melanoma. That's where they occur. And that's not from sun, obviously. It's just you're at risk in those areas. I have, however, seen lighter skinned African Americans with melanomas on areas where the sun does shine. And it's rare, but it can occur. It can occur. But you're more at risk to have it where the sun doesn't shine. And melanoma is interesting because it can start almost anywhere in your body. People think, oh, it's just the skin. It can actually start in your ear and inside the nose and other areas that the sun doesn't get to.
Okay, so other than physical symptoms, are there any other symptoms that one needs to look out for as it relates to?
I think the biggest thing is the evolution, the changing of a mole. If that mole starts to change, I don't care, because it could be a basal cell, and African Americans, they can get basal cells. You want that taken care of. So if you've got an area on your skin that wasn't there before and it's doing something weird, you go have your doctor take a look at it. Absolutely.
Okay, now, how does one perform cancer surgery? You know, I mean, you cut into the skin, you cut it out, or do you treat it topically, or how do you treat it?
Great question. So the two we talked about, the squamous and the basal, sometimes you can treat them topically with a kind of like a chemotherapy you put on it, and it'll kind of dissolve it away. Melanoma is not very nice, and it doesn't respond to that treatment now. So we have to get me involved, and basically, yes, you have to remove that melanoma. Not only do you have to remove it, but you have to remove it with a wide enough margin it doesn't come back. And that wide margin can actually be that wide. So if you got a little tumor, you got to go about 2 centimeters all the way around that thing a lot of times to get a good clear margin. Another scary part about melanoma is it metastasizes, or it can spread. Ordinarily, if it's going to spread, it's a matter of how deep it goes through the 5 levels of skin. Our skin has 5 layers. And every layer that melanoma works its way down, higher the risk of it spreading. So if it's in level 1 or level 2, low risk. That's where you want to find it. And then you just cut it out. easy done. If it starts to get down to level 3, level 4, level 5, then you start to run the risk of having it spread to the lymph nodes. And then I've got to do
Now,
a
it
special
leaves the
test.
skin and goes into other parts of the body?
It sure does. It sure does. And how does it get there, you say? Well, basically, no, not the blood. It goes through the lymphatic channel. So we have in our skin and underneath we've got fluid running all over our bodies. And it's keeping us moist and keeping us
Other than
contained.
blood?
Other than blood. Other than blood. It's called lymphatics. And those lymphatics are there for if you were out and you got bit by an ant on your arm or got bit by a bug or something, it stops you from getting a bad infection. And what happens is that it may travel up to your armpit and go to your lymph node under your arm, but that'll take care of it. Our lymph nodes are there to catch infection or cancer. That's what the lymph nodes are there for. And they're put all over our bodies to try to be the protector of the body. So if you had a melanoma here and it was deep enough to spread, it would get in these little tiny hair-like channels and travel to a lymph node under your armpit. So I want to know, and you want to know, is there cancer in that lymph node? Because if there is, it ups the game. It makes it more serious. It makes me have to do more surgery because you don't want it spreading. So the first guardian is that lymph node. And it's interesting that when I was at the John Wayne, my former mentor, Dr. Donald Morton, had developed a technique that we can actually inject a dye around where that melanoma is. And that dye, it's a blue dye or a radioactive dye. And that dye goes down these little channels to that lymph node under your armpit. And I can actually use a Geiger counter, because it's radioactive, and use this Geiger counter in the operating room. It gets real high when I'm right over the area that's hot, allowing me to make
So now that dye helps to identify where the cancer is?
It helps identify the lymph node, allowing me to take it out and test the lymph node to see if there's cancer. Just because the dye goes there doesn't mean the cancer has, because we don't know that. And we got to find out if it's gone there or not. So you
It locates
it. It locates the lymph node.
Yeah.
The lymph node. We're not sensitive enough where it can locate just cancer cells. That would be really cool. We haven't done that yet. There's people working on that opportunity, but we haven't done that yet. So, but the cool thing is that I can identify that one lymph node. So if you've got a deep melanoma, I do the wide excision, cut it out here, close it up. Then I go under your armpit here and take that out, close that up, and then the pathologist will look under the microscope and say cancer or no cancer on that lymph node. And the neat thing is that that cancer is radioactive and it turns blue by the dye that I inject that turned it blue.
Right.
Another area they use this test, and very commonly, and many of your audience may say, oh, I've heard of that because they had breast cancer. And they use that test a lot in breast cancer. It's called the sentinel node biopsy. So why do they call it the sentinel node? If you think about it, it's kind of interesting. If you think about when they used to have castles, and they had that guy down there guarding the castle, he was the one that was guarding the gate, right? And he's called the sentinel guard, right? And, well, what happened to old sentinel guard when the enemy came? Well, he's the first guy to get shot. Well, that's what's happened with your sentinel lymph node. It's the first one to catch that cancer.
Wow.
And that's why they call it the sentinel node, or the first, or the main lymph node to catch the
Let's
cancer.
talk a little bit, if you would, about, okay, let's first of all talk about contributing factors to skin cancer,
Okay.
and then let's talk about, prevention, for skin cancer.
Sure.
And then let's talk about other forms of cancer.
Okay.
And what the signals are, and cancer is cancer.
Yeah.
You don't want it anywhere.
You don't want any. Absolutely.
And so it's good to talk about, and it's kind of unfortunate, that a lot of people, die, because of certain diseases or certain problems, health problems that are preventable, I think.
Amen. Amen.
The
Absolutely.
extent to which it goes is preventable.
Yes.
So talk about, recognizing and preventing and treating skin cancer, and, some caveats, I guess you can call them, you talked a little bit about the sun, so let's talk first about skin cancer. And
Yeah. So especially
you
since
talked
it's
something already about the
leaf,
treatment.
it's sun time. So the sun's. It's interesting. Melanoma has increased every 20 years it's gone up it's doubled since the 1930s. And the question is why? What happened in the 1930s to make it go through the roof? Well, what happened in the 1930s was the Industrial Revolution came along. And people left the farm and people left the outdoor jobs and went to work in the factories, right? And then what happens when the factory worker goes on vacation? Well, they take off and go to the beach and they take their clothes off and they get sunburned. And so these farmers that work on the tractors, they have a high risk of melanomas on their ears. Not melanomas, it's mostly the squamous and basal. But they don't have a high risk of the melanoma because they don't get this sunburn. So avoid the sunburn. How do you avoid sunburn? You put on suntan lotion. And you apply it frequently. And people say, well, what sun protection factor should I use? And my recommendation is at least a 30, and if you get a 50-50. Some people say, what about the hundreds? The problem with the hundreds is you put them on and you think, oh, I'm covered all day. Well, guess what? You get out there and you sweat, or you jump in the pool, and you wash it off, and then you forget to put it back on. You just got to keep reapplying that sunscreen, okay?
So, it's not a one-time fix.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And most, I talk to my African American patients.
Yeah, the sun. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah,
the sun affect African American patients too.
I have African American friends and patients that'll say, if I'm out in that sun, I can get a sunburn. I'll come at the end of the day and know that I've gotten.
So even
sunburn.
regardless of the color of your skin,
especially if you're lighter skinned, absolutely.
Even if you're dark,
you probably should protect.
You should put on.
I think so. Yeah.
Suntan.
Watch that sun. The sun between 11 and 3 o'clock. That's when the rays are the hardest. Wear a hat and make sure you're covering that nose. And it's interesting. People think, well, I've got a T-shirt on, so I'm out in the sun, but I got a nice white T-shirt, but I'm protected. The average T-shirt, only gives you a sun protection factor of about 15 to 20. So it really doesn't cover you much. You really still should put on sunscreen.
Okay, now, so can a person who's out tanning, can they tan even though they have sunscreen applied?
Yes. I think so, yes.
But the chances of
what they're trying to avoid is that sunburn.
Okay.
But they're not avoiding the risk of getting cancer, skin cancer in the future. Okay. And what else is interesting? Here's another interesting fact that most people don't realize that melanoma, and it occurs on the retina of the eye. So your sun exposure to the eye can be, so you should wear even sunglasses, polarized sunglasses, to help prevent that sunburn going into the eye. Interestingly enough, yeah, melanoma can occur in the eye.
So you need to wear your
absolutely. That's the biggest thing for skin cancers. Sun exposure is the big deal. It's the big deal.
Yeah.
It's the one that puts you at high risk.
Since you are a surgical oncologist, let's talk a little bit about other forms of cancer.
Sure.
Because I know we've heard for years that early detection is the key.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what kind of indicators, what should one do? In order to, how do you test for cancer?
How do you test, and what do you test for, and what age do you start?
Yeah.
Those are all good questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Great questions. So let's talk about women first. All right. Let's talk about what's the number one. Well, the number one cancer killer in women, of course, is lung cancer.
It's not breast.
It's not breast. It's lung. Why is that? Smoking. Yes, sir. Smoking is the number one cause of cancer.
So more women get lung cancer,
yes, sir,
than men? Even?
No, it's number one in men too.
Okay.
No, it's number one in men too. Killer, the number one killer. But a lot of women also get breast cancer. You're absolutely right. So first of all, let's say if you smoked in your lifetime, there are tests now available, and that is CAT scan screening, where they're actually doing CAT scans on heavy smokers to see if they can find a nodule early enough to intervene and prevent it and take that nodule out before you get metastasis.
So you can operate on the lung?
Yes, sir. And you can take that cancer out as long as you find it early enough. So, and we have that at Navicent Health. We have a lung screening clinic where after they can do the CAT scans.
Now, the screening is
CAT scan
photographically, you know,
yes,
they
sir. CAT scan of the chest, not just a chest X-ray, a CAT scan.
So it's not leaning up against the X-ray machine. It's laying down,
going down through the tube.
Going through the tube.
It is. People, ooh, but they can help you with that if you're.
So you advise the people who either smoke or who have smoked. Go ahead and get checked out. There's a way to detect it.
Absolutely, there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So smoking, and that's male or female.
Okay.
So if we talk about our females, then what other tests can they have done to help prevent or catch cancers? Well, the second, of course, in females is breast cancer. And the biggest thing there is get your mammograms. Starting at age 40, you should have a mammogram yearly. And that is the best thing that we can do. Because mammography in this day and age, we're even making it one step better than it was. So years ago, mammography was just a plain film x-ray. And I'd look at the x-ray. I'd put the x-ray up on the board. You've seen it on TV, you know. Marcus Welby, put that x-ray up, take a look. And then it came digital. Well, now I'm looking at it on a computer. And now there's 3D mammography. And 3D mammography is called tomosynthesis. And it's really cool. It basically takes a slice through that breast, all the way through that breast. So imagine if you had a loaf of bread, and I gave you that loaf of bread and I said, there's a raisin in this loaf of bread somewhere. And you took a picture this way, you could say, well, it's there. And you took a picture this way, you could say, well, maybe it's there. But you couldn't put the two together. Now, if I took that loaf of bread and sliced it up, I can tell you exactly where that raisin is, couldn't I? What slice that raisin's in. And that's how tomography works. Tomograms are outstanding. Highly recommend your ladies in the audience to get a tomogram yearly.
Now, how expensive are they? I'm concerned, frankly, about the relationship between insurance and poverty and, life and the quality of life.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm going to interview the lady from First Choice. Today she's coming also.
Good. Yeah.
But I think, and you may or may not know the answer to this, but I think there are resources out there. I mean, and thank God for Navicent, because I know that you all are doing everything you can, to expand and provide health care for everybody.
Yep.
But everybody, regardless of whether your net worth is $300,000 or $3, if you're 40, you should
have a mammogram.
You need to have a mammogram.
Absolutely. And in most instances, a woman can get a mammogram, no matter what her net worth. Of course, if you've got insurance, you're going to be able to get insurance.
Yes,
Medicare, Medicaid, you're going to get insurance. But the question ultimately is, what about the uninsured? And there are opportunities out there. There are resources available for women to get their mammograms. It's interesting. I've looked at this, health disparities. And
yes.
We've looked at health disparities.
I know you're all very concerned about
among women who come to our breast center and are treated. And it's very interesting that women who do not have insurance often present at a later stage. In other words, their cancer is more advanced. But once they hit our doors, they do just as well as anybody with insurance, because we treat them stage for. So it's that screening process that we've got to get out there so that a woman can find that cancer early. And there are things that are available, especially if she's got a family history. Go to the church, go to her doctor, say, doctor, I need where can I do this? How can I get this done? Go to the health department. Go to the health department and ask, how do I get my mammograms? Because in this day and age, there should be resources for everyone to be able to.
Well, I know about two of them. I don't know the extent, not total, but I know you got Macon Volunteer Clinic.
Yes, you do.
And they provide health care for the uninsured and uninsured who's working. And then you got First Choice Primary Care.
Yep.
And we've done kind of presented information on both of those. And I guess if you just really wanted to know, I bet you it's somebody at Navicent who at least
If you
could-
call the breast center at Navicent, they can help guide you. There's Ta Bang Bang. There's other state-funded programs that if a lady comes in and's got a nodule in her breast, feels something, we can get that through and get her help. I mean, and the problem is the lady who finds something has no insurance. Then how does she get that? And then they wait and they worry and they don't know.
Yeah.
Come on in. We can get you help.
Yeah.
There's help available.
Well, I know that you all have done well with the health disparity
certainly try.
initiative. Well, what about other kinds of cancers? It's not limited to breast.
No, it's not.
And we
No,
want
it's not.
everybody,
It's not.
because I've heard all my life early detection.
Amen.
So I mean, what are the other signals or signs? That
Well, what other things can you do to help early detect? Because there's not some cancers, there just aren't very good screening tools, right? But we do have a screening tool for the third most common, and that's colorectal cancer. And that's the one nobody particularly likes, and it's called a colonoscopy. And actually,
I had mine.
good for you.
4
Good for
months
you.
ago.
Good for you. And right now, the American Cancer Society there's a big push on to get everybody screened. Starting your screening once you hit your 50s, you should have a baseline. And then, if everything looks good, you don't have to have one for 5 to 10 years, and the docs will go over all of that with you
But it is
regarding your
treatable
risk factor.
if you
And
find it
if
early.
you find it early, then it's just like any other cancer. If I could find every cancer before it breaks through and gets access to the blood and gets access to those lymphatic channels we talked about, I could cure everybody. So the screening tools are there.
Wow.
We just got to have them. Let's talk about prostate cancer in men.
Yes, sir.
Because men don't like to talk about prostate cancer. George Foreman, big advocate for prostate cancer. George Foreman and other athletes coming forward. So men don't like to talk about our health in general. You know that. Now women are tough. So the reason there's so much research going on for breast cancer is because women went to Congress and said, "Hey, we're tired of this. Give us the money for one B-1 bomber to be put into research every year."
Well, we got to quickly, believe it or not, we're about out
I
of
know
time.
we're having too much fun.
But talk about prostate.
Let's talk
for
about it.
30 seconds. at least.
So it's important African American males because they get it younger. At a younger age. So they need to make sure that they're seeing their doctor, get a digital rectal examination, a PSA. The PSA is a good marker that something's wrong with your prostate.
That's a blood test.
That's a blood test. Absolutely. You need to have it done, especially if you've got a family history. African American
And they do that
males,
at health fairs now.
They
There
do.
are a lot of health fairs.
Absolutely right. Navicent Health
that
Fair will
you-
get you
Yeah.
PSA for free.
Yeah.
And then get you the right guidance if it gets high. So get these screenings done.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of information about all that you talked about is available on Navicent's website.
Yes, sir.
At least, I mean, there are all kinds
They're
of
all there.
resources.
Absolutely.
And all kind of educational programs and outreach programs that one can. And I think it's navicenthealth.org. www.navicenthealth.org. This is a call to action.
Call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Haversham, having talked for 30 minutes,
There you go.
quickly,
Quickly.
with Dr. Paul Dale, who's the surgical oncologist for Navicent Health. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me
I
again,
appreciate
sir.
it. It was very, very
enjoyable as usual.
This is a call to action.
Call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Haversham. Have a great day.